Firms in some oligopolies collude. Collusion occurs when firms cooperate to achieve market outcomes that resemble what would occur in a monopoly. Such cooperation maximizes the sum of the profits earned in the industry. Cooperation with a formal agreement is called explicit collusion. The members of OPEC, for example, meet periodically in Geneva to determine the price they will charge and how much each country can sell. Some oligopolies appear to cooperate without a formal agreement. Cooperation without a formal agreement is called implicit collusion. Sometimes oligopolies that are colluding are called cartels. Now, if collusion is so good and raises the profits for all firms, why don't all oligopolies collude? Collusion is difficult to implement and to maintain because each individual firm usually gains if it cheats on the collusive agreement while the other firms try to maintain it. As a result, many industries fail to maximize the sum of their profits, and pricing is closer to the competitive level than what a monopoly would charge. In some cases, oligopolists charge the same price that competitive firms would charge. The history of OPEC provides many examples that illustrate the difficulty of maintaining an agreement. Many of the member countries usually produce more oil than they agreed to when they signed their agreement in Geneva. Saudi Arabia often kept the price of oil high by selling less than it agreed to sell. One reason the price of oil has fallen recently is that Saudi Arabia is not reducing its output when other countries cheat. Now let's look at the tension between the desire to collude and the desire to cheat with a simple example. Let's assume there's only two oil producers, Saudi Arabia and Russia. And I'll usually denote Saudi Arabia with SA, and Russia will denote that as an R to make my life a little simpler, keep the notation down. We're going to deal with an industry demand that's a straight line. The demand intercepts the vertical axis where price is $10 and intercepts the horizontal axis where quantity is 200 barrels per day. Average total cost for both countries is constant and equals 40 cents at every level of output. And since average total cost is constant, marginal cost is also constant and equals 40 cents for every extra barrel produced. These assumptions let me put together a profit table. The cells in this table represent the profits earned by country one. Country one. And the first column contains the outputs that country one might produce. The first row contains the output produced by country two. They tell me, for example, if country one makes 44 and country two makes 68, then the profit in country one will be $176. Now, let's assume at the beginning that we're going to treat Saudi Arabia as country one and Russia as country two. Furthermore, let's assume that they've agreed they're going to split the market. That means whatever output one firm produces is going to be the same output produced by the other firm. So if Saudi Arabia produces 40, Russia can produce 40. If Saudi Arabia produces 44, Russia is going to make 44. Well, that means that the payoffs to Saudi Arabia will either be 224 or 228.8 or 230.4 or 228.8 or 224 or 216, etc., etc. If both outputs are the same, then the payoff to Saudi Arabia will be a payoff along that diagonal line. And since this is a very symmetric game, the payoff to Saudi Arabia will also be the payoff to Russia. Well, what's the best outcome for the firms if they agree to split the market? Well, the answer is obvious. The best outcome occurs when they both make 48, because 230.4 is the highest profit on that diagonal. if Saudi Arabia and Russia agree to split the market, and they would also then want to agree for each of them to produce 48 units of output. The monopoly output in this case is 96, which is 48 plus 48. When quantity is 98, the sum of the profits earned by the two firms is maximized. They'll each make a profit of 230.4. Their total profit will be 460.8. Well, great. So now we have this wonderful agreement. What's going to happen when Russia leaves the table and goes back to their home country? Now let's say, so now let's put Saudi Arabia up here. Saudi Arabia's agreed to make 48 barrels a day, or 48 barrels, 40 barrels a day. Now Russia said they're going to make 48, which means they'll make a profit of 230.4. But if Saudi Arabia keeps their output at constant 48, is 48 the best output for Russia? Here's where the incentive to cheat comes in. Russia recognizes if it increases output to 72, it can increase its profit from 230.4 up to 259.2. That's tempting. Russia can get more profit if it cheats on the agreement while Saudi Arabia maintains the agreement. Let's suppose Russia cheats. It increases output from 48 to 72 and thereby increases profit from 230.4 to 259.2. Well, how is Saudi Arabia going to feel about that? They were making a profit of 230.4. What's going to happen to them now? Well, now Russia's making 72, and Saudi Arabia is still making 48. Saudi Arabia's profit falls to 172.8. They're not going to be happy about that. Well, suppose they say, well, gee whiz, if Russia can cheat, so can I. What's sauce for the gander? Sauce for the goose. If Russia is going to produce 72 units of output, what output maximizes profit for Saudi Arabia? Well, its best output is then 60. By increasing output from 48 to 60, its profit goes from 172 up to $180. So now Saudi Arabia increases its output sum to increase its profit, given the output that Russia's chosen. What's going to happen to Russia? They were making a profit of 172.8. Now we're going to have, this going to be Saudi Arabia's up here. They were making, it was 60, right? Yeah. And Russia was making 72. Well, now Russia's profit is going to fall. Actually, no, Russia's profit is going to fall to 216. But Saudi Arabia's chosen a level of 60. What's Russia's best choice if Saudi Arabia is making 60? Well, now it's got a tie here. Let's make that into a different color. If Saudi Arabia is going to make 60, Russia is better off at either 64 or 68. Let's say they choose 64. So they're going to, if Saudi Arabia produces 60, Russia can maximize its profit by reducing its output from 72 to 64. As a result, profit goes from 216 to 217.6. Next stage. Now we got Russia is making 64. We got Saudi Arabia is making 60. Actually, what happened then is Saudi Arabia's profit went up a little bit, but do they want to keep their output at 60 when Russia's making 64? They can choose any payoff in that column when Russia's output is 64. Their best output is to produce 64. Their profit goes up from 204 to 204.8 when its output rises from 60 to 64. So if Russia chooses 64, Saudi Arabia wants to choose 64. Now let's look what happened. What's Russia going to do now? So we got Saudi Arabia is making 64. We got Russia is making 64. So Russia getting a profit of 204.8. Russia can choose any payoff in the 64 column, well, shoot, 204.8 is the best. We've reached what's called a Nash equilibrium. Neither Saudi Arabia nor Russia has an incentive to change its output, given that neither Saudi Arabia nor Russia has an incentive to change its output unless the other firm changes its output as well. This result is called a Nash equilibrium. It's a position where no party has an incentive to change unless the other party changes as well. The Nash equilibrium lies between the monopoly outcome and the perfectly competitive outcome. The monopoly outcome is for the industry produced 96. That was a sum of 48 plus 48. It results in a price of $5.20. And the total profit is 460.8. That was 230.4 plus 230.4. The Nash outcome was to produce 128. That was 64 plus 64. Now 128 is higher than 96, so the Nash output is higher than the monopoly output. As a result, the price is lower in the Nash outcome than the monopoly outcome. And also notice the profit is lower in the Nash outcome. Each individual firm in the Nash outcome made a profit of 204.8. This comparison shows sort of the tension that firms face. If they all cooperate and all get along, they can get it. The sum of the profit will be 460.8. But each firm wants to get more for itself. If it does, if the other firm sticks with the agreement and one firm cheats, the cheater wins. But the problem is if they both cheat, they're going to wind up at a position something like this with lower profits for both. So the tension is, do I stick with the agreement and hope the other party does as well as I do? Or do I take what I can for myself and hope the other party doesn't follow suit? If everybody cheats, we wind up worse off. If I'm the one who cheats, I'm better off. Or I can try to stick with the collusive agreement. Now, the Nash outcome is, as I mentioned earlier, between the monopoly and competitive outcome. The competitive output is to produce 192. When quantity is 192, the price will equal 4 cents, which is marginal cost. Again, perfect competition makes price equal to marginal cost. In this case, since average total cost is constant and flat, the profit will equal 0. So what do we have here? The Nash outcome is less than the competitive outcome. The Nash price is higher than the competitive price, and the Nash profit is higher than the competitive price.